So you define the vision for yourself based on your traits, strategize your way to it, accept that you're going to be considered an alien to those people who can't see beyond the narrowly defined bounds of the cultural aspirations. It's interesting to think on you as an individual and what you want to do with your life given the world you were born into. So I think all of us who have access to this sort of tech, the internet that gives you access to this video, por ejemplo, this is an indication of the sort of world you live in, and your life has been touched by the ghoul or the goblin of globalization. And with that sort of globalization stuff, things become standardized. So for example, there's a certain cultural landscape that we were all born into, and this is where globalization plays in. That cultural landscape has certain well-defined milestones, or fairly well-defined milestones, and associated fairly well-defined plans to get to those milestones. But there's a few key concepts that we have to think of when we think about what we actually want to do with our lives. One of them is that idea of a cultural landscape and milestones. Another one is the quiet inner voice within, that some people call the Daemon. Another is, we've got the Daemon. Oh, becoming a bit alien. So let's go with the thought. You have your life, you have a vision, a roughly defined vision for yourself, and you need to figure out a way to strategically get from A to B, from where you are now to that vision. And this is the freaking interesting thing about being a biological organism in this world who can think, is it's not necessarily the achievement of B that is going to make you feel good, but it is when you get very honest with yourself and you actually tune into that quiet inner voice within, the Daemon, who informs and guides your life by encouraging certain actions and thoughts and discouraging other actions and thoughts. When you come back to yourself like that and tune into that voice, it will happily, in its subtle, quiet ways, inform you whether or not you're on the path that is blazed by you and you alone, that could only have ever been blazed by you, because you come into this world with a unique set of traits and characteristics, and with their cultivation over time, they interact with the world. You, the gestalt of all your traits, characteristics cultivated, interact with the world in a certain way that makes your life path yours alone. But if you decide to shoot for cultural milestones, then given their associated predefined plans, fairly well-defined plans, you kind of, what are the odds that the actions that those plans require of you align with the actions that your inner Daemon would have you take, given your unique combination of traits, characteristics, and you as a biological organism in this world? Those odds are quite low to my mind. And furthermore, the cultural aspirations are antagonistic too. They are anathema. Oof, that's a good word. When it comes to considering how to live a sort of an ecologically viable life. So, a good example of a cultural aspiration and a pretty well defined plan to the milestones on that aspiration is the typical one. It's like you're born, you go to school, you go to university, you get a good job based on that university degree, you find a woman, you get married, you have kids, and they repeat the cycle. But this isn't possible anymore, because with all of those different sub goals to the ultimate goal of the cultural milestone, at the end of it, it's like, now you're old, retired, you have your family, and you did all your stuff throughout life. many of the sub-goals to that ultimate cultural aspiration are out of alignment with an ecological way of life. So, for example, when you get your wife and kids, then you have to get a house and cars and stuff like this. And these are currently, in the way that the culture has set them up, unsustainable in the true sense of that word. Not everybody can have the cars that you have and the house that you have, because that all requires lots of resource input and lots of energy input that is itself contributing to, although it's negligible for the individual, but at a collective scale, this is what happens. It's all contributing to the depletion of the Earth's resources at an unsustainable rate, at a rate that far exceeds their replenishment. So for me personally, because I know that, the quiet inner voice within doesn't let me take that path. So it's like, yeah, good luck, James. If you want to do that, I'm going to be subtly informing you that you are not doing what you're here to do. And that's going to make you feel awful. And I actually think that this is why so many people feel terrible in the office jobs that they're in and stuff. It's not necessarily because they have that they can articulate clearly the mismatch between what they're doing and what they think the world should be doing based on an ecological view. But I think something similar is playing into it. That Daemon it's like implicit knowledge. It knows things that you would never be able to articulate even if you tried. And it's right. Usually it's right. That's the really interesting thing about it, is it seems to be freaking wise, seriously wise. And if you're to reject it, if you're to go against that Daemon, that inner voice within, then you do so at your own peril, because it will make your life miserable. And that's you making your own life miserable, because you're not doing what you were put on this earth to do. The reason why we have to become a bit alien is because the cultural aspirations that are on offer currently, those milestones and the likes, are discordant with, they don't gel well with the daemons within us. At least I can say that from my own personal perspective. I know in my personal life I can't do the stuff that the culture would have me do, just because of what I've come to intellectually and theoretically know. So that is strange to people who are really embedded in that cultural landscape and who believe in it 100%. So their daemon isn't saying anything to them. Actually, their daemon is probably saying, continue doing what you're doing. Because I can't talk to those people without sounding a bit like a freak. Because the cultural worldviews, the worldviews that we each hold, are so different. There's very little overlap beyond something like, yeah, I want a good life. That if I start speaking and we start getting into a deep conversation about it, and they start speaking their points and I start speaking my points, we'll see on how many points we diverge. Not necessarily disagree, but we have completely different paradigms, completely different operating software that we're running in our minds. And so we seem alien to each other. Now, to be honest, I seem alien to him or her who's really embedded in the culture and whose daemon is telling them they're doing the right thing, despite it not being ecologically viable. But they don't seem alien to me. I know exactly what they're doing. They're in the culture. They're just doing the cultural stuff with those cultural milestones that are set in place on the landscape, with their fairly well defined associated plans to get to each milestone. So unless I sort of mention, oh yeah, I want to get to that milestone, without using this language, they could understand that. But if I don't mention that sort of stuff, then they're like, what is this guy doing? He's a looper, he's a lunatic. And yeah, I'll take it. I think it fit as alien. I'm a bit alien, okay? So that was the point this morning. It's about roughly defining a vision for yourself based on your unique set of traits and characteristics. It's about strategizing to get there, and strategizing under that rubric, under that title, strategy, falls so many things. Like, for example, just keeping yourself fit in the mind and the body, being able to think on the world, being able to stay vigilant and sharp, and being able to, keeping yourself physically well, because this is the only biological encasement that you're given, so you might as well keep it as well as you can. I'm not a health freak. I like to actually damage my body, but I damage it. I try to damage it in ways that will make it stronger subsequently. That's anti-fragility. So look, anti-fragility, just played into it. Staying smart, just played into it, which means studying. So in the strategy, under strategy falls many strange things that you wouldn't even think play into your strategy in life, but they do. And the reason why you wouldn't think that, assuming you're somebody who's embedded in the culture, is they're not included in the fairly well-defined plans that the culture provides to get to the fairly well-defined cultural milestones. So you seem a bit alien, this guy's weird. It's like, okay, I'll take it, I am weird. So that's strategizing. And then becoming a bit alien. So you define the vision for yourself based on your traits, strategize your way to it, accept that you're going to be considered an alien to those people who can't see beyond the narrowly defined bounds of the cultural aspirations. That was a quick one.